My name's Angelo, and welcome to We Want Picks. This is the only channel dedicated to UFC picks and DraftKings lineups run by professional fighters and MMA insiders. Every week, I join Nick Newell, professional fighter, professional model, and ESPN Top 10 guest, along with Dan Kramer, UFC fighter, Bellator fighter, Ultimate Fighter alumni, and Jacob Lyons, a skinny kid from Indiana. And we break down every single fight, the betting odds, the DraftKings picks, and we set you up for success. First up at UFC 259, Blachowicz versus Adesanya, we have Mario Bautista versus Trevin Jones. This is another fun fight. We've been saying this for weeks. The UFC matchmaking lately has been absolutely spot on. All these fights have been much closer than the odds. And this will be a pretty exciting one. So Nick, I'm going to go to you first. Who do you think wins this fight? Do you think, Bautista, who's the heavy favorite, can get this done against Trevin Jones?
I do. I think that if you ever watch Bautista fight, he fought a tough wrestler his last fight in Miles Johns and took him out with a flying knee and some ground and pound. He's very well-rounded. He's really fast. He moves his feet well. He has one loss. It's to Corey Sandhagen. Does that even count?
Yeah.
like Corey Sandhagen is an unbelievable fighter. He got submitted. The thing about Trevin Jones is he's all heart. So he fought Timur Valiev, who I think is a tougher opponent than anyone Mario Bautista ever fought. Well, besides maybe obviously Corey Sandhagen, but a bigger win than anyone that Bautista has ever beaten. And he almost got finished in the first round and came back to win in the second. But I think it was more because Valiev kind of expended all his energy. Not a knock on Trevin Jones' skill. He's very skilled and very well-rounded. But I feel like Bautista is a better fighter. Is he in my lineup right now? No. I might, if I have my other picks, move some things around and put him in if someone drops out or something happens. But he's not in right now. I didn't put him on, and but I do believe that he will win.
Yeah, and good point about the DraftKings. I mean, $9,100 is a lot of money, especially when we have a card full of title fights where you get 5 rounds to choose from instead of just 3. I agree. I think Mario Bautista, he's definitely the better striker, and I think he's more composed as far as he's actually has fewer fights and less experience, but I feel like he's more composed in his fights. But to your point, Trevin Jones is tough as hell. He was getting beat very badly and survived and then just put Timur out and won that fight. He caught him, but he still put him out and won that fight. I think the commission overturned it because he smoked some weed, but he definitely won that fight, and he's tough, and it shows a lot of grit. So Jacob, I'll go to you. I don't know why you're shaking your head. I'll go to you. What are your thoughts here? Who do you think wins?
The first thing I need to say is if you have never heard a Trevin Jones interview, please, after this video, listen to his voice. I'm just going to say it's not what you expect. That's all I'll say. So after this video, go check it out. Watch his interview. Seems like a great guy. And I actually think I like him in this fight. Nick said that Bautista, he is very, very fast, and he loves that flying knee. He ended a fight with it, and he'll throw a flying knee literally like 4 or 5 times a round. Trevin Jones, Angelo, you said I think Bautista has the striking advantage in this, but Trevin Jones has real power. So it's not as technical, but if he lands, it's not going to feel good for Bautista. But I actually like Trevin Jones to make this a dirty fight, get on the ground, and I like his jiu-jitsu game. So he's not in my lineup. I think I'm actually just going to pick him heads up. And if you're looking for $7,100 to spend, I think he is going to win this fight.
So you take him to win. So Nick, you have Bautista to win. Jacob, you have Trevin to win. I forgot to ask you, Nick, if you're throwing $100 on this fight, do you risk it to win back 50 on Bautista, or do you roll your dice on Jones?
No, I'm putting it on Bautista.
Gotcha. And then Jacob, you're going to throw that on Jones. So Dan, I'll go to you. I also have Bautista. I think he wins. I'm very confident in that pick, but not at $9,100 in DraftKings. But Dan, who do you think wins, and are you going to touch either one of them?
Yeah, no, I think Bautista is the all-around better fighter. This is his 4th fight in the UFC, and Nick said before his debut was against Corey Sandhagen on short notice. So that shouldn't even really count as a loss. That's a tough debut, especially on short notice. But since then, he's beat Jin Susan, who's very good, had a great fight with Petr Yan. He beat a 10 and undefeated at the time, 10-0 Miles Johns, who's also tough. Striking wise, he's got a lot of different looks, switches stances. Overall, he looks like a really good striker. Trevin Jones, to be honest, it looked like he was basically brought in to lose to Timur Valiev, and he was doing that. He was getting destroyed, and that first round was taking a beating. He landed one big shot, and I never like to say a lucky punch. I don't think there's a such thing in this sport, but he landed one big shot after taking a beating, and pulled off the win. So, I looked at his record. He's got a few sub wins on there. He obviously has power after his last fight. But he's got 6 losses. He's 12-6. So I think Bautista is just the all-around better fighter. He's fought the tougher competition and has more UFC experience. So I'm picking him. I'm not putting him in my DraftKings lineup. If I had to bet $100, I would try not to bet $100 on this fight. But if I had to pick one, I would take Bautista even at the negative 200 and just hope Jones doesn't land a big power shot.
Either way, it'll be a fun fight. Even if Trevin Jones is losing the majority of it, we've seen before, he has the ability to come back and stop that fight with one punch. So looking forward to this fight on Saturday.
Can I add something?
Yeah. I
see the death before dishonor tattoo. I think I would rather be dishonored than dead. Personal opinion.
You're not Japanese.
Like something really embarrassing happens to you.
Maybe that's not a real tattoo, and it's like that henna stuff, and you can let him know, and he'll get it removed.
Yeah, ever since I got a family, I'm like, I don't know, man. I gotta raise my kids. I'd rather just get embarrassed. Next fight.
So next up at UFC 259, we have Uros Medic versus Aalon Cruz, and I'm getting much better at announcing these names. So this is another interesting fight. This one is, again, very close. We keep talking about that. The matchmakers are doing great things. What's interesting about Uros is he's from Alaska, and he has one of the fluffiest records I've ever seen in my entire life. It's unbelievably fluffy, but he's fighting in Alaska. What level of competition does he have? So, Nick, I'll go to you again first. What are your thoughts here? Do you think it's as fluffy as I thought it was, or what do you think that's 6-0?
I mean, you look at his last fight, and he beat Mikey Gonzalez, who was 7-1. He has a win over a 5-0 guy, and then a bunch of sub 500 guys. So he's got 2 legit wins. I mean, a lot of people start off that way. You look at someone like Randy Costa, who's 2-1 in the UFC, and I think his fight to get in the UFC, he beat a guy that was 0-7. And then he beat like a 1-4 guy. So I don't think that's the best indicator of anything. If you beat a couple good guys, then you can beat a couple good guys. Medic, to me, is like kind of like a dorky guy that comes forward and throws crazy and spazzes out. But his kicks are hard. He hits hard. He comes forward. He goes for it. He overwhelms people. Aalon Cruz is good too. He had that flying knee knockout on the Contender Series, but I think that Medic could overwhelm him in this fight and finish him either standing or on the ground. So I'm gonna go with Uros Medic. He's not really that refined, but he is good at what he's good at, and I'm kind of impressed by how he does the things he does. I'm picking him this fight, and I don't know. He's a little untested, so I'm not going to put him in my lineup. I thought about it, but I'm not going to do it.
So the untested is that to me is the biggest thing here. So when I say fluff record, obviously there's some losing, some guys he fought with a losing record in there. He fought a couple, more recently he fought some guys with winning records. But the other thing that worries me about his record is I don't think he's been out of the first round, or if he has, it's been for a very short period of time, which is great. But at the same time, Aalon Cruz has been in some actual wars, some big time wars. He has no problem being in deep water. He's super tough. And if you look at the stats, his reach, and you could actually, he looks like he could stretch his knees without bending over. His reach advantage is ridiculous. It was something absurd. I forget the number, but he had an absurd reach advantage here. So pick-wise, it's tricky. Anytime you have an undefeated fighter, you just don't know. You don't know if that's the beginning of an unbelievable streak or if that's just, he's undefeated because he hasn't fought at this level yet. So it's a hard fight to pick. I wouldn't bet any money on it. But I actually think Aalon Cruz, just with the toughness, the fact that he has been in deep water, and we just don't know what Uros is going to do if he doesn't get the stoppage early. So I'm going to go Aalon Cruz on this. Jacob, again, shaking your head. So why don't you weigh in and let us know what you think of the Alaskan?
Yeah, poor Angelo on the wrong side of this one. Uros Medic, first of all, nicknames. We got to go immediately nicknames. His nickname, The Doctor, which is one of the most terrifying nicknames I've ever heard in my life. And Angelo, I know you look at the record, a fluff record, but if you watch film on this guy, I think Nick kind of alluded to it. This dude's an animal. He's very, very good in my mind. I saw a very, very good fighter, especially with kick punch combos. So he'll follow everything up with either a kick coming in with a punch combo, or he's leading with punches and coming with a kick. So he's very, very active. And I love the thing that Nick said about being overwhelmed. I think he's just going to overwhelm Aalon Cruz in this fight. I think, and if I'm not mistaken, Sherdog has Medic listed as a welterweight and Cruz listed as a featherweight, meeting at lightweight. I don't know what that means, because Cruz is about 6 foot tall, so he can fill out. But if they're naturally fighting at a lower weight and two weight classes and meeting in the middle, it seems kind of crazy to me. But I absolutely love Medic in this fight. He made it into my lineup. I would put my $100 on the 175. I think the Doctor gets it done.
Yeah, it'll be we'll see what happens. Like I said, anytime you have an undefeated fighter like this, you just don't know what part of that undefeated streak we're in. So, Dan, I'll let you close this out. Who do you think takes this fight, and are you going to touch on DraftKings?
Yeah, I think the key word in this one is kind of untested. I think the jury's still out on both of these guys. I do agree. Medic has looked really, really good in, the short amount of time we've seen him. I mean, I think 5 of his 6 fights were first-round finishes. So it's very easy to look good when you're the hammer, but we don't really know, how good of a fighter you are until you can deal with being the nail for a little bit. So I don't think we've seen that yet out of him. So might not happen. He might come out and blow through Cruz, but I'm not going to play him in DraftKings or bet anything against him without knowing that. Cruz also looks tough. He's got, again, not a lot of experience at the UFC level. He's on Contender Series. He did go 3 rounds where he won the fight. So I think there's just too many unknowns about both of these guys. So we'll see what they do when they show up. And I think somebody will emerge as a legit player and one might not, but I'm not touching it for DraftKings. And if I had to throw $100 on it, I guess I'm going to go with Medic, just assuming he's got the cardio to go 3 rounds, because he comes out like a ball of fire in that first round.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting. I love watching these young up-and-coming undefeated guys because, like I said, this could be the beginning of something big. So we'll find out on Saturday. Next up at UFC 259, Blachowicz versus Adesanya, we have Livinha Souza versus Amanda Lemos. Another great fight in the women's strawweight division. These ladies are active. What I will say that makes me nervous is Livinha will just pull guard. And I hate anytime I watch somebody pull guard, but her jiu-jitsu is that good that she just doesn't care. And she has some decent striking to back it up. So it's very interesting. It's like she just has no takedowns in between. But I'll go to you first, Jacob. What are your thoughts on the fight? And I'll save what are your thoughts on pulling guard for Nick? Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, you actually kind of stole my thunder there, because the only thing I have written for Souza is she just wants to pull guard. I think there was one fight where they're kind of in a clinch and she even tried to jump up to pull guard. That's how much she wants to be there. So she's kind of a one-trick pony as far as that goes. But like you said, she is very, very good at it. Lemos, I think I mentioned it last week. There was a girl we were talking about that I just didn't feel like she had that killer mentality. And for the amount of money, I just need a killer for $8,700. Lemos is that killer. She is going to get in your face, and she is tough, and she wants to finish fights. I feel like this might be kind of a stalemate, boring fight, unfortunately, where Souza pull guard. Lemos is too good to get caught in anything. So just kind of standing there, one's trying to throw submissions, the other one's just defending submissions the whole time. So I don't think it's a very exciting fight. And for that reason, I wouldn't put my DraftKings money on either one of these, even though Lemos is the killer, like I said. But if I had to take the $100, I guess I would put it on Lemos, but I would try to stay away from this one altogether.
So Nick, you're a wrestler. You wrestled in college, you wrestled in high school, and you have a jiu-jitsu black belt. So what are your thoughts on pulling guard at the UFC level? And then who do you take in this fight?
Remember Paul Sass?
No.
Okay. There was this guy, Paul Sass, he used to just roll for leg locks all the time. And he had the thing called the Sass angle, and he like tapped out a bunch of people with triangles. And he started off really hot and won a bunch of fights. Like, I think he won his first 4 UFC fights pulling guard. With that said, Souza is not as like long and dangly as him. And I think that you look at her record, and she has that split decision loss to Angela Hill. She's a former Invicta champion, but also that was a different Angela Hill than we have now. She has that split decision win over Sarah Frota, who lost all her other UFC fights. And I just feel like Lemos is the more well-rounded striker. But I feel like, again, when you got one person trying to get it to the ground and one person trying to keep it standing, but I don't feel like she's good enough to kind of I feel like there's going to be a lot of stalemates here, and there's a lot of unknowns. And I'm not confident enough that Lemos will win. If I had to throw money at it, I would throw my 100 at Souza, but I'm going to take Lemos to win, and I'm not touching her for my lineup.
Yeah, I'm basically in the exact same boat. I think Lemos wins because Souza, she can strike. She has big, heavy hands. She doesn't have a ton of volume, but she'll throw big, heavy hands to close the distance to then try to pull guard. Or she'll try some offensive wrestling, but as soon as that doesn't work, flip the switch and pull guard. So she can strike, and she does have some power, but she doesn't have that technical striking where Lemos is also a grappler, not as good as Souza, but Lemos has better striking and more volume output. And I think she's going to try to stick and move and just stay out of the distance and just pick her apart. If distance gets closed, it's just going to be Souza trying to drag her down to the mat. So I think it's a boring fight. I'm not going to touch either one of these in DraftKings. It's definitely not worth it. But to your point, if I had to throw $100 on this at plus 160, it's possible she gets a submission, and Souza's never been finished. So I feel like the longer this fight goes, and Lemos has had cardio issues in the past, the longer this fight goes, Lemos will get tired and Souza will just keep looking to get it on the ground. And it's not unreasonable that she would get it to the ground and win by submission. So Dan, why don't you go ahead and close this out again and let us know who you think wins and what you think of that get to the ground at all cost technique.
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, I hate pulling guard. I feel like nowadays listen, some people can do it. Very few people can do it. But nowadays, most fighters are so well-versed in their top game that they can avoid submissions unless they're tired or they really make a big mistake. So I don't like the idea of pulling guard. With that being said, I think this fight probably should be a little bit closer in the odds. I think Lemos is definitely the overall better fighter, definitely the better striker. I think she's going to win this fight. Obviously, Souza's live for a submission. She did beat Ashley Yoder her last fight, which is a solid name. But yeah, kind of to Nick's point, like she's a little all over the place with some of the wins she's got. Split decision loss to Angela Hill. I know it was a long time ago. But then she's got that split decision loss to Sarah Frota. So I don't know. I don't see enough consistency out of her to where I see the value being worth it. And I think Lemos at $8,700 is too expensive for a potential upset if something goes wrong and Souza does get her way and land a sub. So definitely not touching it in DraftKings right now. If I had to put $100 on either fighter, I could coin flip this one. I'd probably just throw it at the plus 160, I guess, for the better odds, although I do think Lemos is going to win. So take that for what it's worth.
So hopefully we're wrong, and it is an exciting fight, but we'll find out Saturday, and we'll see how this plays out. Next up at UFC 259, Blachowicz versus Adesanya, we have Sean Brady versus Jake Matthews. These odds, I think, of the night are some of the most incorrect ones. I think this is a much, much closer fight. I think they're both wrestle heavy. They both have solid grappling. They both have solid striking, and they both have solid takedowns in between. One of them's just a little bit better at all of it than the other one. So, Jacob, I'll go to you first. What are your thoughts on this fight? Who do you think wins? And do you agree that they're almost mirror images of each other?
Yes, I agree that they do have similar fight styles. And we mentioned earlier with Medic being an undefeated fighter, you really don't know if those undefeated fighters, you can never really tell. I'll tell you right now that Sean Brady is a real deal. 12-0, he is an incredible fighter. He's a great grappler, but his striking looks so precise and so powerful, and he's so comfortable striking there. And I almost, when I made this graphic, I almost had him flip around because his back tattoo is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. It's bright red, just a devil face across his entire back. It's terrifying. So props to him for that. I do have in my notes here, also, you mentioned the wrestling. I have Jake Matthews question, can he out wrestle him? I think that's the only way that he can win this fight. I think Sean Brady's striking is much more powerful, much more precise. They both can wrestle. So if Jake Matthews can out wrestle Sean Brady, I think he's got a shot. His last fight, he took Diego Sanchez to a decision, which I don't like to see. Diego Sanchez at the tail of his career, a wild dude, but you should be finishing those people if you're fighting at this level, I think. So I have Sean Brady winning this fight. He didn't make it in my lineup. The devil tattoo almost forced him into my lineup, but I withstood the urge there. So, but I think he wins the fight, and I would comfortably put my $100 on that 220.
Yeah, and they both have, they're very similarly matched in similar styles. They're both jiu-jitsu black belts. They both have good wrestling, and they both have decent striking. I do think the striking is the biggest gap between them. I think the wrestling is comparable, the grappling is comparable, but the striking, I think Brady's striking is just another tier above Jake Matthews, and I think that's the difference here. So I think Sean Brady wins. I think I would, I don't remember if he's in my lineup, we'll find out, but I think I would comfortably put him in my lineup if I had the 9,300 to spare. But Nick, what are your thoughts here? Do you think it's closer than these odds, or do you think they're farther apart?
Yeah, I think you guys are wild. I think Matthews wins this fight. I mean, if you look at his record and who he's fought, when he was a 55-pounder, he beat Johnny Case, very good fighter. He submitted Wagner Rocha, who's one of the best grapplers in the world. I mean, granted, it's an MMA fight. Like Adolfo got submitted. It can happen to anyone. Obviously, he's lost some fights at 55, moved up to 170. He's 6-1 in the UFC, and his only loss was to Anthony Rocco Martin, and that was a good fight up until he got finished. You look who he beat. He beat, I'm going to butcher this, Jingling Li, who just beat Papazino, who's nasty. He has all these wins. Yeah, he didn't finish Diego Sanchez, but I can say this as someone that fights. Sometimes, and Dan, maybe you can attest, sometimes when people are like really awkward, it's hard to get a read on them. So you don't really know what they're going to do. And Diego Sanchez is so weird that it's like hard to like read what he's going to do. And if he's like all over the place, you don't want to take the risk and do something stupid and get caught with something you've never seen before. So he just kind of cruised to that win. Maybe you say Brady's like a little more sharper, but honestly, I think Sean Brady's a great fighter. But some people said that Court McGee fight was really, really close. Granted, it was his UFC debut, but I'm going with Jake Matthews, and I'm putting him in my lineup.
Wow. So the exact opposite of my pick here. So we'll see what Dan thinks. So Dan, quickly, so Nick alluded to Jake Matthews. Jacob said Jake Matthews should have basically smoked Diego Sanchez, but he didn't. And Nick is saying the awkward Diego Sanchez style messes with professional fighters. So weigh in on that, and then let me know who you think wins this fight.
Yeah, no, I think, First of all, to not finish Diego Sanchez at any age is not a disappointment. I mean, Diego Sanchez is one of the toughest guys there is ever, face the planet. So at any age, that guy's not going to give up easy. I do think Jake Matthews is a great value in this one. I think the fight's going to be much closer than the odds say, and it's $6,900. I am definitely considering putting him in my lineup. There's so many good options in this card in terms of ways you can play it with so many 5-round fights. So I have him as tentatively in my lineup right now at $6,900. I think Brady is better, but again, I think it's a closer fight than the odds suggest. I think Matthews can make some, get into some scrambles, make the grappling part of the game, and it could end up being a slugfest. I think Brady is the better fighter, but for $6,900 to afford some of the more expensive guys, I think Jake Matthews is a good value pick. So if I had to pick who's going to win, Sean Brady, I think will win, but Jake Matthews is very live. So at plus 180, I'd put my $100 on Jake Matthews.
Well, it's definitely an exciting fight. It's close. I think we all agree it's closer than the odds. It's an exciting fight. This could potentially be fight of the night, so I'm looking forward to this one. Next up at UFC Fight Night 259, Adesanya versus Blachowicz, we have a striker versus striker battle in Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Carlos Ulberg. And this is very interesting. So you have his record here, Jacob, as 5-0. I've only seen his record as 3-0 because he is a world-class kickboxer that has traveled the world, kickbox forever, trains with Israel Adesanya, but does not have a ton of MMA experience at all. And his what I thought was 3 professional fights actually span over the course of like 10 years. But he's only gotten 3 fights in. So not much MMA experience, but a bunch of kickboxing experience. And that's what the odds makers see here in what should be a stand-up fight against Kennedy. So I'll go to you, Nick. What are your thoughts here in this striker versus striker? Do you think the MMA experience outweighs the kickboxing experience here?
I've seen Nzechukwu fight, and I think he's very good. He's composed, kind of bread and butter type guy. Uses his length well. Good fighter, but Ulberg has the more experience in the striking department with his kickboxing fights. He's kind of stays technical, but then as soon as he lands, he just starts going wild and throwing bombs, which is always a little concerning. But I would be actually more concerned with that against like a shorter, more powerful guy instead of a long guy like Nzechukwu. I know I'm butchering that. So I'm going to go with Ulberg in this fight. He does cost a lot of money. I'm honestly between him and then I have another fighter, and I'm going to kind of guess after I see weigh-ins. I might take Ulberg out, but I do have him in my lineup because there were some other people that I thought were a great value that were much cheaper. And I do think he wins and can get the finish.
Yeah, I think, this is striking versus striking essentially. So Nzechukwu is also a striker, as you've mentioned. I think his only path to victory here is if he does get it to the ground. I don't think he can win a stand-up battle. I think he needs to get it to the ground, and we haven't really seen that from him in the past. So, he does have more MMA experience, and he does have his sort of flashes of brilliance. But for the most part, he's somewhat underwhelming. If we had seen more grappling out of him, I think he'd be a lock. But we haven't really seen him grapple, and there's levels to striking, and I think Ulberg is at a completely different level. I think he's worth the $9,000 because I do think he wins by stoppage. I think the odds are correct, and I think he's a pretty comfortable pick. But I'll go to you, Jacob. What are your thoughts here? And did you touch either one of these for your DraftKings lineup?
Look at this guy, Carlos, man. Look at this guy, Carlos. I'm about to give you information that you won't hear on any other UFC MMA podcast. Carlos turned down the New Zealand Bachelor twice. They tried to make him the New Zealand Bachelor, and he turned it down twice, and I believe it. And I was actually just looking at this picture and looking at you guys look at this picture. I'm pretty sure Carlos is what Angelo thinks he looks like. Angelo was talking about in the group chat, my chiseled jaw, this and that. I think Angelo, when he looks in the mirror, he thinks he looks like Carlos. With that said, I do think he is an incredible striker. What worries me is, and we'll talk about with Kai Kara-France too, with that city kickboxing team that is on this card, Adesanya, sometimes there's some pressure that comes with that. I think we saw that, and I'll talk about with Kai Kara-France later, but there is some pressure that comes along with being with your teammates. You're the first one of your teammates to go out there and fight. So we'll see how that affects him. You mentioned with his limited MMA action, that could affect him even more. With Kennedy, I see a decent fighter, but he just looks a little stiff to me. My big prediction for this fight, it's not lock of the week. My big prediction is Kennedy gets 2 eye pokes in this fight because he likes to do that DC where he just kind of keeps his hand right on you. And the second you jab at him, he's right in your face. I'm telling you, he's long. He's 6'5". 2 eye pokes is the prediction. Carlos Ulberg, what an incredible looking gentleman.
Well, check our
but I'll take Carlos to win. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked.
Yeah, check our betting guide on Saturday to see if we have a prop bet on the number of eye pokes for Nzechukwu. So quickly, before I go to you, Dan, Jacob touched on the fact that there's, I think, 5 fighters on this card fighting out of the same gym as Israel Adesanya. And while that's not uncommon for a giant team like American Top Team, that is pretty uncommon for a smaller team, especially a smaller team on the other side of planet Earth. So, Nick, I'll go to you. We've talked about this in the past. What are your thoughts on fighting on the same card as your teammates? And if they lose, does that mess with you or does the show go on? I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about me tonight.
Show goes on. I mean, I think it goes down to personality. Like, I want all my teammates to win. As a training partner, I go out of my way to help my teammates get ready no matter what. I'm always training. I'm always helping them get ready. I legitimately care about them very, very much. When they fight, I get emotional. But when I have a job to do, I have a job to do. You winning or losing does not affect how I perform. It has no emotional. I fought on cards where I've had teammates lose before, and I won on both of them. So it's not a big deal to me. The one thing that would now I'm going to come off kind of as a diva. Like, I like having all the attention from the coaches and having them there to hold pads for me or roll with me or do whatever I want to do at that time. So I'm like a kid that doesn't like sharing their toys. So I prefer to not fight on the same card as teammates, not because I'll get emotional whether they win or lose. It's just because I like having all the attention.
No, that makes sense. And if you're watching the rest of our picks, just keep that in mind because about 5 of these guys are in that gym. And Dan, you know, obviously you've been a part of American Top Team for a very long time. That's a massive gym. It's probably impossible to fight on a card where you don't have a teammate fighting. So what are your thoughts on that? And who do you think wins this?
I fought on a bunch of cards, UFC, Bellator, where I had guys at the gym fighting with me. I personally liked it. I mean, I liked having guys. We had so many guys in the room that it didn't really matter. There were so many guys in and out of camp all year long that felt like, somebody was always training for a fight. And fortunately down here, we have so many coaches that are never left without a coach. But as far as like fight week goes, I loved having my guys with me because we're on the same page. You're cutting weight together. It's something to kind of take your mind off the fight and just have some camaraderie with guys that you train with and putting all that work with. So I like it. As far as, you know, if they lose before you and you see it, I've had that happen too. And like Nick said, it sucks for like about 2 seconds. I delete it out of my mind. And then, like you said, you got a job to do. Literally delete it out of my mind at that moment. And it's back to getting ready for what you got to do. So I don't think that stuff really affects you. I mean, it's a smaller gym. So I don't know. I think it could be a plus where they're all on the same page. They're all training together, all getting ready together, cutting weight, traveling together. I think it's a good thing. As far as this fight goes, I think Ulberg is going to win. I think he's a significantly better striker. Stosic has more MMA experience, but from what I've seen, he's going to get beat up striking, and I haven't seen it, any real wrestling out of him to make the fight different. Now, I think he is training at Fortis MMA now, so they're probably working with him on some things. I wouldn't be surprised if he tried a different game plan, but I just don't think he's going to have enough. I'm sure Ulberg coming from the camp he's at. He's not underprepared. You know, you could say he's underexperienced, but in all reality, he's got a ton of kickboxing experience. So I think Ulberg's going to win this. I do like him for my DraftKings lineup right now. $9,000's a little expensive, but I think he's going to either score a ton of points in a striking match and probably get a finish. So I've got him in there right now, still playing with some pieces as we go through this, but I do like him in my lineup.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page. If Nzechukwu was more of a threat with the grappling, we may have gone a different direction, but this is likely striker versus striker, and Carlos Ulberg is definitely the better striker. Next up at UFC 259, Blachowicz versus Adesanya, we have Tim Elliott versus Jordan Espinosa, and this is a very, very, very fun fight. Tim Elliott is a wild man who will do anything he needs to do to win the fight. He's been in a million wars, and he's relentless. And Espinosa is fluid, smooth. He's got solid takedown defense. He's a very good striker. And this is just an awesome fight, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, Jacob, what are your thoughts here? Who do you think wins, and are you going to touch either one in DraftKings?
You're stealing all my content, man. This is the fight of the night. It's going to be wild. Tim Elliott is a wild man. It's one of those fights where it's even hard to even break down what you think is going to happen, because who knows what Tim Elliott's going to do. I will say, I think the biggest difference here is level of competition. Tim Elliott has fought some unbelievable people. He's lost to them, but he's fought some unbelievable people. Some of his losses, Figueiredo, Askarov, Brandon Royval, Demetrius Johnson, Joseph Benavidez. So, I mean, he's fought the best of the best. I think he has the experience to get, whatever wildness he wants to get across the cage done. Jordan Espinosa, is a good fighter, but I just think Tim Elliott, like you said, will just find a way to get it done. And I actually had a lineup that I'm still working. I have two lineups that I'm working with, and one of them has Tim Elliott in the lineup. That's how comfortable I am with him just overwhelming it. Like I said, the level of competition is just on a different level. At plus 105, it is interesting here. The odds, at least at the time, were plus 105, even though he's a DraftKings favorite. I would put $100. I would love to put $100 on plus 105 for Tim Elliott, and he almost made it in my lineup, and I definitely think he's going to win.
Yeah, it is interesting that the DraftKings, it's a $200 difference, but it is interesting DraftKings has him as a more expensive fighter when he is the underdog. And I think he's been an underdog since these lines opened. I don't think they flopped. With that being said, I agree. I have Tim to win. He's not in my lineup, but not any fault of his. $8,200 is a lot for what is probably a close fight, and it's a 15 fight card with 3 title fights. So I'm choosing wisely with who I have in my lineup. But Nick, we'll go to you. Do you think just Tim Elliott's relentless, wild, move forward at all cost style beats Jordan Espinosa, who's probably the more technical fighter?
Yeah, I do. I mean, you look at his last fight versus Ryan Benoit, and Benoit is a very good striker, and Tim Elliott was kind of keeping him at bay with his jab and staying long, and the whole fight was on the feet. The thing about Tim Elliott is he gets caught because he'll shoot from way too far away and take these risks and do this crazy weird stuff that doesn't make any sense. But he gets in these scrambles and he catches people. He finishes people. If you watch him on The Ultimate Fighter, he looked amazing. He beat a lot of really good people. Did they both fight Matt Schnell, I believe? And one has a win, one has a loss. I mean, I think Schnell's way better now than he ever was, than he was on the show, certainly. But Elliott loses fights because he makes little mistakes. I don't think that he's the same fighter. I feel like he refined his game a little bit, but I feel like he's going to cause a scramble with Espinosa and submit him. So I'm going with Tim Elliott in this fight. I put $100 on him, and I'm putting him in my lineup.
Wow, all 3, everything you can do.
Trifecta, baby.
So, Dan, what are you putting either one of these guys in your lineup, and are you going to ride the Tim Elliott train here?
Yeah, I like Tim Elliott in this fight, and I think this is, both guys have similar career trajectories kind of on paper, right? Won a bunch, lost a bunch. The one thing I'll say that's the big difference between them is Tim Elliott's losses were against much tougher competition kind of across the board compared to Espinosa. So, like we said, he's lost 3 out of his last 4. But those 3 losses were to Davison Figueiredo, Askarov, and Brandon Royval, who was up until his last fight on the verge of becoming a superstar in the division. So all three of those losses are, not easy opponents. And he looked good against Ryan Benoit in his last fight. So I think he's one of those guys that has all the skills. He's a little bit of a wild man. I think it's going to be an exciting fight. I just think Elliott's a little bit better kind of everywhere. And I am picking him to win. Definitely taking him, putting $100 on him at plus money. And I think I'm going to put him in my lineup. Again, I got a few moving pieces that we'll figure out by the end of the show. But I think for $8,200, he's a good value in a fight that I think will be a lot of back and forth points, exciting fight. And he could get the sub, like Nick said.
Yeah, so another exciting fight. We'll see what happens here. We'll see sort of whose career continues to inch forward after this fight. Next up at UFC 259, Blachowicz versus Adesanya, we have Rogerio Bontorin versus Kai Kara France. Another member of the city kickboxing team that Adesanya comes from. We talked about it a couple videos ago, so check that out if you want to hear our thoughts about multiple teammates fighting on one card. But this is another fun fight. They've all been fun fights. So Nick, I'll go to you. What are your thoughts on this? Are you going to go with Kai Kara France on this, given his recent surge, or what are your thoughts here?
I think Kai Kara France is a really good fighter. He's like by the book guy, hands up, moves forward, moves his head, nice and compact, can strike, decent wrestler, not the best grappler. Bontorin is very good though. He lost to Ray Borg his last fight, but Ray Borg to me is like a great fighter, very good boxing, maybe better boxing in Kai Kara France. But I feel like Kai Kara France is an all-around maybe more diverse striker than him, so it's two different styles. You look, he beat the former WSOF champ in Big Latov, and he's got some really good wins. I'm not touching it because there's just a lot of unknowns for me in this fight. I think it's going to be a good fight. It has potential to be fight of the night. It's just at these costs, I'm not really worth the risk, and I'm not 100% sure on who I think is going to win. If I had to pick, I would pick Bontorin just because the grappling edge.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on with the grappling there. So obviously Kai Kara France is the much better striker. He's the more technical striker. He's a very fluid striker, and he has, I forget the stat, I think it was like 90% takedown defense. His takedown defense is awesome. And Bontorin's a very good grappler. He's not as good of a striker, but he's a very good grappler. So, this is a traditional grappler versus striker matchup, and Bontorin's got to get it to the ground to win this fight. I just don't know if he can. I think the technical striking can keep him far enough away. And then if he does get close the distance and get close enough to grab a leg at 90% takedown efficacy, that's not going to be an easy task. So, Jacob, I'll go to you. What are your thoughts? You going in the same direction as Nick and I, or are you going to jump to the other side?
Yeah, this is a tough fight to pick because I alluded to it in the earlier video. Kai Kara France's last loss was on an Adesanya card. So that was a teammate loss. He might feel double the pressure now to be, to redeem himself almost for city kickboxing. You don't know. I think he was a big favorite. It was against Brandon Royval, and I think he was a big favorite going in that fight. If I remember DraftKings, I think I put him in my lineup. He ended up screwing me, but I'm not bitter about it. I'm not bitter about it. But he lost that fight to Brandon Royval in a weird scramble, and Royval submitted him. And Bontorin's got 11 submission wins. He is a very good grappler. I don't think he's an incredible wrestler. His takedowns almost look like just kind of muscle takedowns where he just kind of grabs someone and just kind of – he doesn't really have any trips or anything like that. But if he gets Kai Kara to the ground, it's going to be in trouble. Another thing I noticed about Bontorin, too, is he loves to try and catch kicks. And against a kickboxer, that can help you because there's going to be a lot of kicks coming your way. And you can catch one and get him to the ground that way. But against a skilled kickboxer, those kicks be coming at your head when you think they're coming at your body. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Kai Kara France wins by head kick. but he better be careful not to make sure this doesn't get on the ground. So I have Kai Kara-France winning. I don't have him in my lineup, but I have him winning by head kick.
Well, and if you've ever seen any Bas Rutten sort of interviews about kicks and things of that nature, it was always never throw a kick by itself, ever. It doesn't start, it doesn't finish an exchange. It's in the middle of an exchange. And I think Kai Kara-France is so technical, he won't just leave a leg kick out there to get caught. But anything's possible. So Dan, what are your thoughts here? We're all going Kai Kara-France. Are you in that boat also?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, Nick's got Bontorin to win with the grappling edge, right? Yeah, I think Kai Kara-France is going to win this fight. I think, his last fight against Brandon Royval, that first round, I mean, that was like the round of the century, the amount of output those guys had and the way they were hitting each other. So, I also think Royval is a tricky guy where he gets subs like that in scrambles, and he was kind of relatively unknown and, up until call it his last few fights. But he turned out to be really, really good. So I think Kai Kara-France is going to come back stronger from that. Bontorin, I think this is a close fight. I think he has the grappling edge. I feel like the odds are about right on this, but the DraftKings costs are a little off. So $8,500 for Kai Kara-France in a fight that he should win, but could be closer than we think. So I'm not going to spend the $8,500 on him, but I would bet $100 on him at -145.
Yeah, that's a great point with the DraftKings odds and the regular odds, because I actually completely agree. I mean, -145, that's saying you're a little better than a pick'em, but $8,500 is you're going to win, and hopefully by stoppage. So yeah, I completely agree, and he's not in my lineup either. Next up at UFC 259, Blachowicz versus Adesanya, we have Joseph Benavidez versus Askar Askarov in what, in my opinion, is the biggest question mark of the entire night is how is this fight going to go? We have fought, 15 times for the belt in Joseph Benavidez versus just the absolute surging up-and-comer Askar Askarov. This is, my eyes are going to be glued to the TV for this one. So before I give my pick, I'll start with you, Nick, and I know you're buddies with Benavidez in real life here. So what are your thoughts and how do you think this goes?
I mean, Askarov has been great lately. He's 13-0-1. His one draw is to Brandon Moreno, who fought to a draw with the champion, who beat Benavidez, if you want to go by MMA math. Unfortunately, life doesn't work like that. It's not MMA math. Askarov has a win over Pantoja, who looked great against Cape. He beat Tim Elliott, who's on this card, who's nasty. He was fighting overseas. He beat some really good guys, and he's tough. But Benavidez is good at what he's good at, and he's good at like throwing these weird loopy strikes. Like he throws like a lot of push kicks and hooks, and the timing is off, and no one really does it like him. And at 125, there's not a lot of people that can put the lights out with one shot. And he's that guy. I don't feel like Askarov has that same power that Figueiredo has. And even Joseph Benavidez being more hittable than most people at 25, he gets away with it because not a lot of guys have power. But he did get put out by Mighty Mouse and Figueiredo. But I think he gets it done this fight. He's an underdog. He lands at overhand. Hurts him a couple times. I don't know if he'll finish him, but it'll be enough to steal a couple rounds, maybe even get his patented guillotine choke. So I'm going with Benavidez, but as he gets kind of older, that speed kind of goes. So I'm not going to touch him in my lineup, but I would put money on him, and I do think he's going to win.
Yeah, it's definitely the big question mark to me for Benavidez is what did those two fights against Figueiredo do to him? I mean, he lost those pretty badly, and I don't know if that was it. I thought he actually retired after that last loss, or at least was thinking about it. So I just don't know if that loss was so bad. That's probably the last title shot he's going to get if he's just sort of checked out after that. But let's assume he didn't. His scrambling is some of the best scrambling you'll ever see in any fight for any mixed martial artist ever. His speed is ridiculous. And yeah, he has 7 losses. Those 7 losses are to the best people on planet Earth. So I just think at plus anything, I'll take that as far as betting is concerned. And Askarov is very good, very talented, absolutely an up-and-comer, and is definitely going to do big things in this division. But he's been in trouble in every single one of his fights. So Brandon Moreno hurt him a few times in a draw. Tim Elliott took him down without any trouble, took him down a few times. And Pantoja took his back. So I just think Benavidez, with the wrestling he has, the speed that he hopefully still has, the power that he definitely has, I just think he can put that all together, and he can get the takedowns if he needs it. If he lands heavy, that's going to be a problem. And if it touches the mat, his scrambling is just so ridiculous that he either won't stay down there if he doesn't want to be, or he'll pass and take his back if he does. So I'll go to you, Jacob, and get your thoughts here on if you agree with me that Joseph Benavidez is just better everywhere and has been doing this for a little longer.
Yeah, you keep stealing. I need to go first from now on because you keep stealing all my stuff. Askarov has been beat up in some of his fights. And I think DraftKings, his amount shows it. We've seen all the other undefeated fighters, right? And where they've been in DraftKings. This is an undefeated fighter who's only $8,300 because he's struggled in some of these fights. He gets the job done and he wins. But since he's been in the UFC, he has 1 split decision win and 2 decision wins. And if you give Joseph Benavidez, an opportunity, you're going to lose the fight. You said he's lost to champions. He's lost twice to Figgy, twice to Demetrius, twice to Cruz, who are the most dominant people in the last 15 years. And then the other one was to Sergio Pettis. So none of those guys are slouches. And the level of competition is just different here. Askarov, he is undefeated. And he won those fights, but he's been in some real trouble. And Joseph Benavidez, even though he's lost, it's to the best of the best, literally. So I love Joseph Benavidez in this fight. I would gladly put my $100 on a plus 115. He didn't quite make it in my lineup. I did some other things, but if you're looking for an underdog, this is a great place to be in Joseph Benavidez.
Yeah. I think we all agree. So Dan, I'll let you close this out if you're going with the old vet in this one.
Yeah, no, I think you guys nailed it. This is going to be a close fight. Benavidez has, so much more experience than Askarov. Askarov has looked good with his kind of grappling heavy approach, but again, he got in trouble against Pantoja in a very close fight, got almost subbed a couple different times. He definitely had no fear of subs because he just kept going for those takedowns, and every time Pantoja scrambled, he ended up in a bad spot. But it was enough to win on the scorecards. It's only his 3rd fight in the UFC. And I think when you're fighting against a guy against Benavidez, who we just listed has fought everybody, I think that is a factor. I think Benavidez, even at 36 years old, is still good enough, still scrambly enough to make this an interesting fight. Hopefully prevent the takedowns, hopefully keep Askarov from just holding him up against the fence, trying to take him down. And I think he finds some space and can land some of those weird loopy shots he throws. I mean, his last 2 losses, were both to the champ. And realistically, in the first fight, he looked really good in that first round. He was catching him with some looping shots, and then he got put away. But he did not look terrible. The second fight, he got finished quickly. But again, it's against Davis and Figueiredo. So I think Benavidez is still one of the best in the world. And I think this will be a fight that shows whether or not Askarov is as good as people are thinking. So I'm taking Benavidez for the $7,900. I wish he was a little bit cheaper. But I've got him in my lineup right now at the $7,900. And at plus 115 odds, I would probably take him in a bet as well at this point.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get a lot of questions answered when this fight's said and done. So it's going to be an exciting one. I'm looking forward to it. Next up at UFC 259, Blachowicz versus Adesanya, we have Song Yadong versus Kyler Phillips in what, again, will be another exciting fight. And what's interesting here is the DraftKings cost, the DK cost, and the odds. I mean, they seem very far apart, meaning obviously Yadong's the favorite and he's more expensive. but he's just a slight favorite, and that is a drastic difference in price there. So, Nick, did you put either one in your lineup, and what are your thoughts on that big difference in price?
Yeah, I didn't put them in my lineup because I'm not confident enough that Song Yadong will get the finish or be active enough to get the finish. I like his style. I think he's good. I think he's going to win. But Kyler Phillips is tough, and he's had some tough fights with some good people. I think, some of his losses were pretty close, and there's still more unknowns with him based on who he's fought. Song Yadong has kind of got lucky. People thought he lost the fight versus Marlon Vera. I thought he won that fight, but I thought it was close. If it went the other way, I wouldn't have said anything. You look at his fight versus Cody Stamann, and a lot of people thought he lost that too. Maybe his luck will run out this time. I do think that he will win this fight, but I'm not touching it.
Yeah, and I think, I agree with you. Those were definitely close fights. They could have gone either way, but they're two big wins on his record that'll be there forever. Ultimately, he's the better striker, Yadong is, where Kyler Phillips is the better grappler. And Yadong gets taken down. I don't have the stats in front of me, but he's been taken down plenty of times. So while he's a very technical striker, he does get taken down in his fights. He hasn't been finished on the ground with a Cody Stamann. But he does get taken down. Kyler's a good grappler. He has power on his feet, but I think the grappling is his biggest threat here in this fight. So it'll be interesting to see if Yadong can keep him at bay. I think he wins. I think his technical striking can keep Kyler Phillips at bay, but at $8,800, I'm not touching that. That is just that's very expensive for what is a much closer fight than that. So Jacob, you nodded. Do you have Yadong in your lineup?
If you're an old school wrestling fan, let me know if you recognize this. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, We Want Picks proudly brings to you the lock of the week. Kyler Phillips is the lock of the week. And that was the old DX tag team. Ladies and gentlemen, girls, the tag team champions of the world. Anyway, I love his takedowns. You mentioned he's a better grappler. He's not a grappler that's just going to shoot wild takedowns. He follows up combos with takedowns. He's going to get in Yadong's face and just – I think he's just going to take him down. You guys mentioned the Stallman fight as well. Stallman, once he got him to the ground, just completely controlled him on the ground. And I think Kyler Phillips gets that done. Song is obviously the much better striker. I just think Kyler Phillips he has the wrestling to do it. I just think he's got the wrestling to do it and gets the job done. It's a lock of the week. He's in my lineup, and I'm taking that plus 125. I'm putting a second mortgage on my house and betting the plus 125.
Damn, I can't believe I went against the lock of the week.
Yeah, this is going to be – somebody's –
This lock of the week has me scared now. I'm switching my whole lineup over here. Jacob with the lock of the week. What is that? 4 weeks in a row?
4 weeks undefeated. 4 weeks undefeated.
Right. You throw tie. You throw ones where fights are canceled in there as part of your winning streak. Right. Anyway, so am I up, Angelo? Sorry.
You're up.
You got me all flustered with the lock of the week.
I'm hot and bothered over that lock of the week.
He's changing his mind.
I'm scrambling over here to change my lineup. I think Yadong is going to win this fight. Although Jacob has me second guessing, and I'm going to have to watch some more tape this week. I think Yadong is definitely the better striker. Kyler Phillips has the edge in the grappling, but to be honest, I don't know that he's got the wrestling to get it there. I think he might, but I haven't seen.
Be careful.
I got to watch myself now. I'll be getting texts all fight long as soon as Phillips lands the first takedown. Listen, Yadong trains at Team Alpha Male. He's going to be well prepared for this. He's a very, very good striker. He's got a lot more experience in the UFC. He's fought tougher guys. Kyler Phillips, I think, is a great up-and-coming prospect. I think this is a tough fight for him in, one of his first UFC fights. He is also a good striker. He throws all sorts of crazy stuff. He's athletic, flying knees, good boxing combos. So he could surprise Yadong in the striking department with some of the stuff he does. But I think Yadong's chin has shown to be really, really good. He had that slugfest against Marlon Vera. I think in the later rounds he got taken down. But I mean, the pace in the first couple rounds was insane. So I think this is going to be an exciting fight. I think it's going to be close. I'm giving the edge to the more experienced, battle-tested guy in Song Yadong, but I think the first round of this fight could be absolutely nuts. I do have Yadong in there right now at $8,800. But again, I'm shifting some things around, and with Jacob doing the lock of the week, I don't know if I want to go against that with the way he's been running lately. So I think Yadong will win, but I think there's going to be fireworks in that first round.
Kyler is a decent striker. I think we all kind of put him to bay as the grappler. He is the better grappler, but he can definitely stand and bang, and that could cost him, honestly, but we'll see what happens. But lock of the week, you guys will see I know what's going to happen, but you guys will see what's going to happen Saturday.
I want to watch some more of his older fights, watch some more tape on his wrestling, because the last fight I saw.
Daniel, fall in love.
Really? Okay. All right. Does he have wrestling credentials? I didn't get any. I didn't see any of those yet. Yeah, no. I saw he wrestled in high school, I think, right? So
good enough for me.
I don't know. I'm leaning on the well-prepared team alpha male fighter, Yadong. I think that'll be the edge, but we'll see. Kyler Phillips looks to be a promising up-and-comer.
Play the Curb Enthusiasm music now.
Well, either way, it'll definitely be an exciting fight because Kyler, while definitely the better grappler, he's absolutely not the better striker, but he does have power, and he is exciting on his feet. He has no problem throwing. But with somebody as technical as Yadong, that may not work out for him. So we'll see what happens on Saturday night, but another good fight on this already stacked fight card. Next up at UFC 259, we have the main event of the undercard. We have former champion Dominick Cruz versus the always exciting Casey Kenny. Another fight with a million question marks in it, similar to the Benavidez one that we broke down earlier. We have a former world champion who hasn't won a fight. I wrote it down. He technically hasn't won a fight since 2016. But that's because he's coming off a couple losses and he has wild gaps in between his fights because of all his injuries. But Dominick Cruz is still one of the best to ever do it. So, Dan, I'll go to you first. Do you think he still has that fire? Do you think he should be an underdog? What do you think happens here?
Yeah, no, this is an interesting fight. It's the accomplished vet versus the up-and-coming prospect. But let's start with Casey Kenny. So he's won 9 out of his last 10. His only loss was to Merab Dvalishvili, however you say that. Beachvili, okay. Who was tough as hell. He's very good. He's well-rounded. He stood in the pocket and traded with Nathaniel Wood. Hard punches, kicks. I mean, the pace they had in that first round was insane. Casey definitely slowed down a lot in the second round. But, I mean, it's understood the way they fought that first round. I think he's more of I don't want to call it predictable, but more traditional fighter in the way he does things. Dominick Cruz, though, on the other hand, he's one of the best to do it. His 2 most recent losses were to arguably the pound-for-pound best in Henry Cejudo and one of the most athletic strikers in the sport, Cody Garbrandt. So I just think Dominick Cruz's style is too frustrating. It's too tough to deal with. I think Casey Kenny's going to have a problem with that, trying to find him, trying to figure out where those weird punches are coming from. And I think Cruz just has too much knowledge, too much experience, and also has one of the strongest mindsets in the sport. I mean, the guy's come back after multiple extended layoffs, which is really, really hard to do, and gone in and fought title fights, fought top contenders, and competed very closely or won a lot of them. So I think between his experience, his trickiness as a fighter, I think he's going to pick apart Kenny and kind of show there are levels to this. He's still only 35 years old, so he's not that old. So I think at plus odds for Dominick Cruz to be plus odds in this fight, I think is crazy. I took a bet on him early on when he was around plus 140, I think. So I'm taking Dominick Cruz. I've got him in my lineup. I did bet on him at around plus 140. Those odds were pulled. I'm surprised he's still up at plus 125. I thought this would come down to a pick 'em. But, I like Cruz in this fight.
So, Nick, what are your thoughts here? DraftKings has him at the exact same price point. So did you touch either one of them? Who do you think wins?
Yeah, I just don't really know. I mean, I think the difference maker in this fight, if Cruz were to win, would be actually his wrestling. When you fight someone like Merab Dishvili and he can take you down, Merab is a fantastic wrestler, but Dominick Cruz gets thought of more as a striker, but his takedown game is very good. His knee taps are good, and he mixes it up really well. With that said, the game plan of sitting and waiting for him to spring forward has kind of worked well against him. I mean, maybe Casey Kenny doesn't hit as hard as either Garbrandt or Cejudo, who both have bricks in their hands, but he is a very good technical boxer, good in the pocket, and can wrestle. I think Casey Kenny's gonna win. I just think that he might get out wrestled, so I'm not putting him in my lineup.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think I think Dominick Cruz probably has some of the highest fight IQ in the UFC right now, or at least one of those guys with just such a high level. He can see what's going on. He can feel what's going on. He's setting things up 3 or 4 steps in advance. I think his fight IQ gets him through this. On top of, Dan, you mentioned he's very tricky, and he is very tricky. He doesn't stop moving. He bounces around. And Nick, you mentioned people have beaten him by waiting for him to bounce around and not trying to cut him off or chase him. So it will be interesting. I think his fight IQ will be the difference here. But Jacob, what are your thoughts? And did you draft either one of them?
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off what you're saying. Fight IQ off the charts. You just have to listen to him call fights to realize, this guy knows exactly what's going on at every single moment in every fight. And he was my commentator for a long time. And then, but I got to stick with the red beard. I grew the beard out. Paul Felder is definitely my favorite now, but Cruz is fantastic. And I think you nailed it with the fight IQ. I'm going to take it a step further. I think a lot of vets get in trouble when they don't realize that they're aging. They think they have the same speed. They think they have the same power. They think they have the same chin. I think Dominick Cruz is self-aware enough to realize, hey, I think I'm slowing down a little bit, So all his herky-jerky stuff, I think he's going to find a way to kind of reel that in. Nick mentioned he could go back to the wrestling to get the job done, but he's going to do whatever he knows that he can do to win this fight. I just think he's in and out. He has enough quickness still to just kind of outpoint Kenny in and out, and steal those rounds and win this fight. So I'm with you guys. I think Dominick Cruz fight IQ gets it done.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jacob. He is an intelligent fighter. As equally as skilled as he is intelligent. And in fighting, like you said, when you're getting older and certain things aren't as good or as quick as they used to be, don't keep doing it that way. Switch it up if you need to. So, yeah, that's a good point. I think he is smart enough to realize his strengths and weaknesses at this point. And we were talking about him like he's an old man. He's only 35.
Man.
So.
A lot of miles on those tires, though.
Yeah, it's true. But there's also a lot of time off. He had a couple year layoff. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think he's a very, very smart fighter.
Well, it's going to be a ton of fun, and it's the main event of the undercard. So that's how stacked the main card is. That this is on the undercard. So it's going to be a ton of fun. Another fight that I'm just going to be glued to the TV. Next up at UFC 259. Blachowicz versus Adesanya. We have 2 very heavy-handed strikers opening up the main card with Thiago Santos and Aleksandar Rakic. I'm going to go to you first, Dan. You've been an American Top Team forever. You trained with Thiago Santos for many years when you were both at 185. So what are your thoughts on this fight? You're also great friends with Glover Teixeira, who Santos just fought. So what are your thoughts here? Do you think Glover sort of showed the world how you beat Thiago? What do you think happens here?
First of all, I'm always going to root for ATT. All my old teammates, I'm always going with them. And I honestly think Thiago Santos, look at who he's, his last few fights, take away the Glover Teixeira loss. Glover's right now the number one pound for pound, or number one contender in the division, right? He was coming off a major surgery going into that fight, and that's a damn tough fight, your first fight back from surgery, right? So Glover's unbelievable, but also like that's a tough position for Thiago to be in. Before that, he lost a split decision to John Jones. So his last two fights were against the number one contender and the ex-champ, and both fights he had split decision with John Jones. He got beat up by Glover, but also had Glover hurt a couple times. So dude's got absolute bombs for hands. He's got very good Muay Thai, very technical striker. And he's got a KO win over the current champ right now, Jan Blachowicz. So Thiago Santos is legit. I think he can definitely win this fight. Rakic is his most recent loss was to Volkan in a split decision. He's also a powerful striker. He's got good decent takedowns against Volkan, in the early round of that fight. The thing where I think Rakic is going to have a problem, depending on his game plan, is he seems very okay with trading punches. So against Thiago Santos, that is a recipe for disaster. We've seen it a bunch of times. Wild exchanges, wild rounds where Thiago gets hit, the other guy gets hit, and usually it's the other guy who ends up going down. So if he plans on striking like that with Thiago Santos, I think he's going to get put away. The one thing I will say is I saw him go for some single legs and some trips, and he grabs the single leg and he dumps you. I didn't see much in terms of a double leg, but he definitely has a little wrestling in there. So I would imagine for this fight, he's going to be working on that, especially after watching the Glover fight. So that's probably his one path to potential victory. But I think Santos is going to win this fight. Stylistically, both the guys have the crazy power. Thiago's the better striker. If it's a shootout, I think he's going to land the KO. But I just worry about Rakic coming out with a wrestling heavy approach and making this a different fight. So I do like the value of Santos at $7,600. But with both guys having dynamite in their hands, Rakic potentially being, trying to fight a smart fight and wrestling and grappling and taking away that explosion from Thiago early on. I don't have either in my DraftKings lineup right now, but at plus money, I would bet on Thiago Santos all day.
Yeah, I think you nailed that. So I'm not going to repeat everything you just said, but obviously Thiago Santos has scary power. I mean, he almost put Glover out twice, once in each round. And thank God, for Glover's sake, that he was able to wrestle and get it to the ground and sort of regain his composure there and get through that. I think
that's that fight experience, that old man fight experience.
It is. I mean, he was able to survive that. And you said it best. You said, if it's a shootout, I don't think it goes well for Rakic. And I agree. If it's a straight up shootout and Rakic is going to trade with Thiago Santos, he will not win that exchange. The speed and the power combo was insane. With that being said, he does have wrestling. I have not seen Thiago Santos in the past use offensive wrestling. And I think Glover showed the path here and showed how dangerous Thiago Santos is. It was very obvious how dangerous he was, but he was able to get through that and get it done. I think Rakic is going to follow sort of that game plan, but just try to avoid getting hit first. So I think Rakic will win, but if his head came off his body on his way in for a takedown, that would not surprise me one bit. One thing I will say,
Angelo, is I think we're going to see a different Thiago Santos than last fight. Your first fight, I think it was a pretty quick turnaround off of that surgery. And he blew his whole knee out against John Jones and literally fought, a good portion of that fight with no ACL and, a couple other ligament tears. So to come off that injury, your first fight back, I think, is always going to be tough. So he's now, further removed from that injury. I think he's, got the fight under his belt. It was a loss, but I think he's going to be in better shape. His nerves are going to be a little bit better. He's probably more rehabbed. I think he's going to come out looking a lot different this fight.
Well, and I guess before I hand it over to you, Nick, I guess we can't forget, yes, he lost to John Jones, but most people thought he won that fight.
He won that fight.
John Jones.
He won that fight.
So, Nick, I'll let you break it down. What are your thoughts here? Who do you think wins this fight?
I thought he lost to John Jones personally, watching the fight, but that's me. I did think it was really, really close, but I had Jones winning. I think that Rakic or however, or Rasic or is very
We'll all
good.
say it differently. So far, we've got two different ones for me and Angelo. Jacob, you can
I have
have a fourth pronunciation.
So he's a more dynamic striker. He throws a lot of different stuff, and actually, he's American top team Zagreb. So both they're. I don't know how you could have American top team in another country, but they're both there. But obviously, Thiago Santos hangs out at the headquarters and trains there and has a lot of good high-level partners. Rakic has looked phenomenal in his last couple of fights. His wrestling versus Anthony Smith was really good, but he also hurt Anthony Smith with leg kicks as well, if you guys remember. Santos just has those hammers, and he could put you out at any moment. $7,600, no brainer. Threw him in the lineup. He could get that one-punch knockout. He could finish the fight at any moment. And with some other people I kind of want to put in my lineup, it just made sense to throw him in there, and I'd throw money on him.
Great. So do you think he wins? I mean, obviously you think he wins as well?
Yeah. Honestly, I wouldn't bet on this fight because I'm like, geez, Rakic is a beast. But I think Santos will get it done. I mean, it only takes one shot. And he looked great against Jones. And, he said he was a little scared his last fight versus Glover because of his knees. One time I sparred Glover, and Glover punched me in the body and literally lifted me off my feet. Like I went flying in the air. And I'm like a 155 pounder, obviously, but I threw a kick at him really hard, so he just marched forward and just body shot at me and lifted me off the ground, and I deserved it, so I'm not even mad about that. And he was able to drop Glover. Obviously, Glover wore him out. Glover is such an amazing fighter against the wall and has one of the best single leg run the pipes and will really just wear you out. And he wore him out and he broke him. So that's something that kind of worries me, is that maybe Rakic can wear him out and break him like he's been in the past. But I do think that his power will make the difference, and it's something that will make someone not really want to exchange and kind of slow things down a little bit, like in the Jones fight. And I'm going to take Santos, and at this value, he's in my lineup.
And Jacob, what are your thoughts here? What direction you going, and did you touch it for DraftKings?
Yeah, this definitely seems like one of those Sean Shelby, hey, Thiago, let's see if you can still fight type of matchups here. It's kind of one of those changing of the guards. Let's see what happens with Santos. I watch a lot of fighters pick this fight, and a lot of fighters are picking Santos. And basically the only reason they gave was, well, he's just tough as shit. And usually you look at fights like that and that type of analysis, you're like, oh, well, that doesn't really mean anything. But in this fight, I think it honestly does. I think he just finds a way to get the job done. He knows what's on the line. He knows this is kind of the changing of the guard fight, and he wants to reprove himself. Like I said earlier, he beat John Jones. He was the champ in my mind on a blown out knee. So I think he finds a way to get it done. He's not in my lineup, but I think he wins the fight. Great.
Well, we have an absolute fireworks opening up the main card, and we'll see what happens Saturday. Next up at UFC 259, Blachowicz versus Adesanya, we have Islam Makhachev versus Drew Dober in a much closer, tighter, more exciting fight than the odds will let you think that this is. So Nick and Jacob went back and forth on how they thought this fight would go sort of offline. So Nick, I'll let you go first here. Give us your thoughts. Who do you think wins this fight? You have Islam or Dober?
Well, I'm going to say this. I think that Islam will win this fight. He moves well. He strikes well. Obviously, his wrestling is amazing. His top pressure is fantastic. I think if he gets Dober to the ground, Dober is in trouble. Dober's weakness, to me, is his jiu-jitsu. So he's been submitted before. But I think that he's a different fighter now. I think he's really finding himself. It took him a lot longer than other fighters to really find himself. And he's got that one punch knockout power. I mean, he hits crazy hard. and he's really good. The last time Makovic got knocked out was versus another lefty who hits hard, but I don't think Dober hard. Dober moves around really well. He had Dariush in some trouble, but then later Dariush was able to catch him. I would favor Makhachev in this fight. I would pick him to win. Dober could put him out, though. I feel like it's a possibility that with Dober's power and his movement that he could catch him with a short hook and put him out. So if I had to throw money at this fight at 270, I'd put it on Dober, but I'm not putting this in my lineup.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think Drew Dober needs to keep it standing if he's going to win this fight. And I think he needs to like fight in the pocket and make it dirty and use that power and make Islam pay every time Islam tries to take it to the ground. Because I think Dober is most vulnerable on the ground. I think Islam wins. I do not have him in my lineup, and I would not bet him at minus 330. But I do think he wins. It's an interesting fight. And Jacob, I'll let you talk about, you said you watched an interview where they talked about.
You said you have him in your lineup or no, Angelo?
I do not have him in my lineup. But Jacob, I'll let you go because you watched an interview about Islam and it touched on a few things that made some sense here.
Yeah. So the interview you're referencing and Islam is my guy, by the way. He's one of the funniest dudes on earth. If you ever watch YouTubes of him interacting with Khabib, their boys, funniest dude in the world. But their coach, they have the same coach, has the same coach for the last 9 years. That coach said in the 9 years that he's been coaching Khabib in sparring, he's only seen Khabib lose a few rounds in sparring ever in 9 years. And he never said who that was. And he said this week that was Islam. Islam is the only person he's ever seen beat Khabib in a round in sparring. So Islam's got that for him. He's beat, one of the greatest fighters of all time. I'm just kind of going to wrap this into a question for all three of you guys, because you're all three wrestlers. It seems to me that the Khabib effect on people was, they get in the ring and their only thing they're ever thinking about is don't get taken down, don't get taken down, don't get taken down. And when I watch Drew Dober, especially against Alexander Hernandez, it seems like he has pretty good takedown defense. Is there ever a point where your takedown defense is good enough to where you're not even worried about getting taken down? That's what worries me about Drew Dober in this fight, is that he's already beaten. He's already thinking, I can't get taken down. I can't get taken down. I know Dan's known for his takedown defense. Do you ever get to a point where you're so good at takedown defense that you don't even think about don't get taken down? Can you just play? Can you fight your own fight? Or are you still just that worried about it against an unbelievable grappler like Islam?
I can jump in on that one. As far as fighting wrestlers and being a striker, it is challenging, right? Like, you have to have a game plan that balances your aggression, but also takes in mind the takedown without being too worried about the takedown that you're not aggressive. So it's a tricky spot to be in as a striker. I love takedown defense. That was like my favorite part of the game, defending takedowns against the cage. If I did get taken down, I always wanted to get up right away. I got pretty good at that. One of my first loss ever was against a good wrestler in Matt Riddle. And I had him wrestled much prior to that. And after that fight, I was like, I am never getting out wrestled again. So I trained that all day, every day for probably 3 years. But I ended up liking my takedown defense so much that I almost got too reliant on it. Like, I'd back up to the cage, let guys wear themselves out trying to get a double leg against the cage. And then I built in some offense off there where I'd spin to the clinch and stuff like that. So it didn't really bother me too much, because I always knew if I got taken down, I would get back up. And I had pretty good defense to prevent myself from getting taken down. But I was also never the level of striker that Drew Dober is, right? He throws fire, he commits to his shots, and he walks forward in a way that's going to leave him much more exposed than some other striking styles. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays this one. He's definitely the better striker. He's on a 3-fight win streak. He trains with Justin Gaethje at altitude, so I'm sure he's in good shape. His recent losses were to Dariush and Olivier Aubin-Mercier. So what was the factor in both of those fights? I think it was a little bit of wrestling. So that is the one concern, one of the main concerns I have with Drew Dober in this fight. I don't think Islam's going to let this be a striking fight. I don't think he's going to let him breathe. I think he's going to get on him early, clinch him, get on a leg, make it a grappling match. And to be honest, Islam's striking is not terrible. I don't think he's going to spar 3 rounds with him, but it's good enough to where he can maintain in those positions. On Islam, he definitely tries to control the distance, right? So when they are striking, he's going to try to stay out of range. But as soon as he gets in that range, it's going to be a wrestling match. So I think that has gotten Dober tired in the past. Granted, they were kind of all-out wars prior to that. But with Dariush taking him down, and then you mentioned it earlier, but Hernandez did take him down, I think more than once. So those 2 guys taking him down, I think Islam's going to definitely take him down and make it an ugly fight. So I'm not touching this for DraftKings at $9,400. If I had to bet on it, I don't know. This would be a no bet for me, but if I had to, I would just put it on the plus 270 for the upside that he lands a shot. But I think Islam's going to win this fight and just make it a grind, take him down, and make it an ugly fight.
Now, Dan, I've seen you fight a lot since that Riddle fight, and I think that he wouldn't be able to take you down now. With that
right
said,
now, he could definitely take me down because I'm about 210, and the hardest workout I had this week was the Peloton.
With that said,
#ad.
I think that you should be next in line for the WWE United States title. I think that you should rematch Matt Riddle in the WWE.
You know what? I thought about that. If if things start going south with my job and I'm not making money anymore, I might I'll do one of those where I come out from under the ring with a steel chair and just out of nowhere clock him with it. That's still a thing in WWE, or is that was the coolest thing back in the day? I think now the steel chairs are probably not as cool anymore.
No, you got to get him with a sledgehammer now.
Yeah, sledgehammer, right? Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
But yeah, speaking of Matt Riddle, man, he's done some amazing things since the UFC, huh? He's like a legit WWE like top level guy now, isn't he? I keep hearing that. I don't follow it that closely, but I keep hearing he's like pretty much like one of the A or B level guys up there.
Yeah, he's doing well. I mean, that's for another day, but first we need to get that rematch for the title so you could be that guy.
Okay. Let him know. Somebody contact his agent.
Yeah, let's make it happen.
Ladder match.
Yeah, for sure. Hell in a Cell.
Right.
Well, either way, we pretty much think this is a straightforward fight for Islam, but it's not an easy fight. Drew Dober is tough. Drew Dober has some threats, and he can end this fight on his feet. Again, we'll see what happens. This is another exciting one for UFC 259. Next up at UFC 259, we have the first title fight of the evening. We have Petr Yan defending his bantamweight title against Aljamain Sterling. This is the most interesting of the 3 title fights, in my opinion. Aljamain seems to be sort of the darling of the card, the most live underdog in the 3 title fights, which is very tricky against somebody who's been as dominant as Petr has. So, Nick, I'll let you go. How do you think this plays out? I mean, this is definitely the closest of the 3, in my opinion.
The way that Aljamain Sterling just styled on Corey Sandhagen was insane. That was like as perfect as a fight can go. When you look at a fight and you're like, a perfect fight, that was amazing. With that said, I'm going with Yan. Things that concern me, not that I care, I'll actually root for Aljamain Sterling because I like him a lot as a person. I don't really know him personally, but I've always been a fan. He did outwork. He will outwork you. He outworked Jimmy Rivera in their fight and won on the feet. He outworked Pedro Munoz in that fight and won on the feet. So he's very, very good on the feet. Petr Yan's power is crazy. He does kind of like that Thai style stance. He's really hard to take down, and he can throw at different ranges and fight at different ranges. So I think that Petr Yan's going to win. I did put him in my lineup, and if I had to throw money at him, I'd throw it at Petr Yan.
Yeah, I think I agree. I'm picking Jan to win as well. I have both of them in my lineup. I think if you're going to double up a fight, in one of these 5-round fights, and we'll talk about this more in our DraftKings breakdown, but if we're going to double up a fight, I think this is the one to do it. Aljamain Sterling is very affordable. Petr Yan is very affordable considering he's the champ right now. I think this is the most value you're going to get in any of the title fights here. Petr Yan is interesting though. So I agree. His power is absolutely insane, but he has been, in his fight against Jose Aldo, obviously it was a gruesome fight towards the end there, but in his fight against Jose Aldo, Jose beat up his legs a little bit and had a nice, was doing well. And Petr Yan made those adjustments and adjustments that we didn't see in last week's fight with some calf kicks in the Munoz fight. So he made adjustments there. And then we saw him get beat up a little bit by John Dodson, and he made adjustments. So I think Petr Yan has crazy power. He's crazy tough. And I think the difference between him being the champion and people who are not the champion is his ability to make adjustments on the fly. If Aljamain throws things at him that he didn't expect, or he's losing some of the grappling exchanges or whatever it is, I think he will make adjustments and figure out how to win. And that's what he's been doing in the past. So, Dan, I'll go to you. I don't care how hard you're shaking your head, Jake. I'm going to Dan next. Who do you think wins this fight? Do you think Aljamain is the livest underdog in the 3 title fights?
Yeah, I think this is going to be an awesome fight. I mean, there's multiple potential fights of the night on this card, but I think this is definitely one of them. Let's start with Petr Yan. So first of all, he did his training camp at ATT for this fight. So right out of the gates, I'm rooting for him. I'm going to pick him, but I'll be honest, this is a very, very close fight. And I think both guys have edges in certain areas. So Petr Yan is a striker. Like you said, he is powerful. He's much more stationary and calculated of a striker compared to Sterling. He's got that high guard. He comes forward. He had a very close fight with Rivera. He was losing a good amount of the exchanges, but ended up dropping Rivera at the end of the first. Then Rivera hurt him with leg kicks, was winning the second, then got hit with a big head kick, dropped him. So even in fights where there are close exchanges, he finds a way to land that big shot and win the round. So, you mentioned the Aldo fight, very competitive too. Aldo had him hurt with kicks, but again, Petr Yan finds ways to put you away. So over 5 rounds, it's tough to avoid the power of that guy. And he's got the cardio to stay in there. And all he needs to do is land one. But then there's Aljo Sterling. And I watched his last 3 fights against Corey Sandhagen, Munoz, and Rivera. Oh my God, this dude looked unbelievable. So, first of all, his 3 losses he has were back in 2017 and 2016, and 2 of them were split decisions. So not a lot of losing on this guy's record. And the fight against Pedro Munoz, another ATT fighter, I couldn't believe how good he looked. He was such a fast pace. His hands are incredibly quick. He's so unorthodox and athletic, mixes up everything, great head movement. But his big thing is his entries from distance, right? He stays out and he finds ways to get in and land shots. He uses length really, really well, maintains a crazy output, even with all the wild shots he throws, kicks, hooks, long punches. He's even got long hooks from out of range. So, and he also showed heart when he got hurt with some leg kicks and body kicks in that fight and still kept coming. So, and then we've also seen him wrestle against a few guys and win as well. So I think this is a very close fight. I think it's an interesting fight. I think Aljo's got the advantages in speed, length, wrestling, athleticism, but Yan has one big edge, and that's power, especially with the left hand. So I think the distance control with Sterling is going to frustrate him. I think Sterling will score a lot of points, but I think over 5 rounds, all he needs to do is make one mistake. And, I'm going to take Yan to capitalize on that mistake and land a big shot at some point later in the fight. So I think it's going to be a ton of DraftKings points. I am also putting both guys in my lineup. And I'm picking Yan, the ATT guy, but I think it's going to be a hell of a fight.
Yeah. So Jacob, you're shaking your head. I'm assuming you're the only Aljamain Sterling pick out of the crew here.
I think that on a pay-per-view card from now on, I should get 2 locks of the week. This is my backup lock of the week, Aljamain Sterling. And it comes down to intangibles. Petr Yan did not beat the champ to be the champ. He beat a champ, but he did not beat the champ to be the champ. And this is his first title defense. Those are usually the toughest fights. There's a lot of pressure. You're the champ. You're expected to win. Those are tough mental warfare fights for someone to go through. Title defenses are tough. That's why not a lot of people actively defend their titles. Aljamain Sterling, and I think another part is when you are the champ because you force people to fight your way, right? You can't – Aljamain Sterling is not going to fight the way that Petr Yan wants him to fight. There's just no way. He's going to do his own thing, and he's going to fight his own fight, and he's going to find a way to get it done. Aljamain, I originally doubled up this fight in my DraftKings lineups. But then the more I think about it, I think Sterling is I think he's a better fighter. I just think he is a better fighter. He's fought, the same level of competition. And Yan, he is the champ, but he didn't beat the champ to be the champ. So I think Aljamain Sterling gets it done. He's in my lineup, and I would put my money on the 105.
Either way, ton of fun. I mean, this card, I say this at the end of all of these. This is a fantastic card, and this is another really fun fight. So let's see what happens on Saturday.
This is probably the fight I'm most looking forward to because, Jacob, you're not wrong in a lot of things you said. Like, his style is going to be tough to deal with for anybody. I just think over 5 rounds, we'll see. He's athletic enough and he's had the cardio so far, but at one point he makes a mistake with his hands down. That could be a problem, but I wouldn't be surprised seeing it go the way you just said as well. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. Next up at UFC 259, we have the women's featherweight championship on the line where Amanda Nunes defends one of her 2 belts. This is the 145-pound belt, and she's defending against Megan Anderson. The odds are miles apart. The DraftKings costs are miles apart. It is all accurate. Amanda Nunes should be as giant of a favorite as she is. She has looked superhuman. She's cleaned out 2 completely different weight classes, and she's beaten some of the best that have ever done it to become the best that has ever done it. But Megan Anderson is very capable. She's very long, and she does have quite a bit of experience. So, Dan, what are your thoughts here? I mean, do you think Megan Anderson can win this fight? Obviously she can, but what do you think here?
No, I think Amanda Nunes is she's the GOAT, right? She's on a different level. She's beating everybody. She's beating them all pretty handily, to be honest. From what I saw in Megan Anderson's tape, she's 6 feet. She's a giant, right? She trains with James Krause, right? That's a good thing. She defended takedowns pretty well against Norma Dumont, landed a big right hand, but even her right hand, I don't think is on the level of power that Amanda Nunes has. Her last 4 fights ended in the first round. She's got a couple, she's got a sub victory in there, but Amanda Nunes is just on a different level. She's good everywhere. She's unbelievable everywhere. She's got wrestling, she's got jiu-jitsu, and she has unbelievable power for this weight class and really any weight class. So I think she's going to walk through Megan Anderson probably pretty early in the fight. And I think it's going to be a one-sided fight. But as far as DraftKings goes, $9,600, I don't think I would spend that on anybody, even if I knew I was going to get 100 points, just because you have to take so much else out of your lineup to do that. So not doing anything in DraftKings in this fight, but my $100, even at the negative 1,200, I'm putting on Nunes.
to get $1.20 back.
It's better than just giving it away.
So I think, I agree. I didn't touch it for DraftKings because you don't even want to throw Megan Anderson in your lineup because she's going to lose. And there are people out there that are going to pick Megan Anderson to win, and they're doing it specifically so that if the 1 in a million happens, they can be like, told you. But there's no actual, I don't know how you could look at these fighters objectively and say Megan Anderson is going to win. Now, she does have a path to victory. She can use her distance. keep Amanda Nunes as far away as possible, stick and move, stick and move, stick and move, stick and move, and get it done. Megan's durable. So I disagree with you where you're saying Amanda's probably going to put her away pretty early. I think it's actually going to be a decision. I think it's just going to be a long, drawn-out fight. Megan Anderson's huge, heavy, and long. So I do think it's going to be a longer, drawn-out decision, but we'll see what happens. Jacob, I cannot imagine you disagree with us in any of this.
No, it's funny because that's somebody that I would pick her just to be like, I told you so. You know, that's kind of my style.
But Megan Anderson.
But even if that's my style in this one, I'm willing to look stupid because Amanda Nunes is gonna win this fight. Megan Anderson, like you said, is tall, can use her length. If she uses that kind of Conor McGregor against Chad Mendes stabbing front kick to kind of keep her at bay, she's got to keep this fight real clean. But I will mention one thing, and this might be my, I told you so thing. She's got those long legs, and she does some wild stuff from her back out of her guard, and she's thrown up some wild triangles. And if Nunes maybe has her maybe hurt more than she thinks she is, and she gets a little too comfortable on the ground, Megan's got those long legs and could throw something up wild. So we'll see what happens. But I have Nunes even at the $9,600. I put her in my lineup just because if you can guarantee a win, I think I was going between her and Islam, and I had the money to pick her instead of Islam. And we already talked about the Islam fight and our worries kind of with that fight. So I'm picking
she's
Nunes.
A way better value than Islam, I think, right?
So I put her in my lineup. The $1,200, like Dan said, I would put my money on that too, and I'm willing to look stupid if she loses with everyone else.
And not to stretch this out longer than it needs to be, but Amanda Nunes does have a baby at home. Babies are awful. Most of us know that. I don't know if it's a factor. I don't know if it's not a factor. Some fighters, sort of separate that work-life balance. Others don't. I have no idea if that's a factor, but nobody has ever had a newborn and then slept through the night like nothing ever happened. So
I agree, Angelo. I don't have kids yet, but Pollyanna, if you're out there, if you answer my DMs, we'll see what happens.
How many have you sent her by now? A couple hundred?
They put me on some sort of delay, Dan. I don't know what's going on. It's like I can only send one a week now, but I know she's watching. Just if you could respond, we'll get on that.
I thought you moved on to what's his name with the DMs. Who was he gonna?
I'm still Pollyanna.
William Knight. His boy William Knight.
William Knight.
So, I think everybody knows what is going to happen here, but it'll still be interesting to watch. Obviously, Megan Anderson's taking this fight very seriously. She's not stupid. She has seen the same Amanda Nunes that we have, and we'll see what adjustments she makes if she uses that reach, if she tries to stay away, and we'll see what happens. Next up at UFC 259, we have the main event of the evening. We have Jan Blachowicz defending his light heavyweight championship belt against Israel Adesanya, who is moving up a weight class to challenge him. Before we get into our picks, Dan Kramer reached out to Glover Teixeira to ask him his thoughts on this fight. Glover Teixeira is the number one contender in the light heavyweight division on the planet. He's also in Las Vegas right now, cutting weight and preparing for this fight, because if Israel drops or if Jan drops, Glover steps right in and takes that spot. So we reached out to him, asked him for his picks. And not only does he break down this fight and how he thinks this will go, he also had John Hackelman with him, who is the head of the Pit Fight team, Chuck Liddell's head coach. He had Fernelli with him, who's his boxing coach. He also had Alex Pereira with him, who is the only person ever to knock out Israel Adesanya. So check this out. Let's see who they pick.
Hey guys, Glover Teixeira here. My boy Dan Kramer just got a YouTube channel called We Want Picks, and he give a DraftKings pick every week. Here my picks for this week main event, Blachowicz and Adesanya. Of course, I want Blachowicz to win because he's winning. Light heavyweight. I'm fighting for the belt next and everything. Adesanya win. Who knows which is gonna defend, light heavyweight or heavyweight? Or middleweight. I don't know. Of course, I want Blachowicz to win, but I think Adesanya is going to win. Even though he's smaller guys in weight, but he's taller, he got more range. I think he's walking around very light. I heard this morning he's walking around 193. I think he stay light for reason. He wants to move fast, be quick, not stay in the front of powerhouse Blachowicz. I think he's going to keep touching him, instigate him to commit an error, come after him and frustrate him and catch him, because Adesanya is very good with the counter shots, with the counter punch, and catch him and weigh in when he made mistakes. That's what I think. Of course, Blachowicz got a big chance of knockout because of the power, but I don't think he got the speed or the footwork that Adesanya have. And another thing, Blachowicz definitely can win this fight in the ground as well, but he's not a guy that they're really going for the ground too much. He like to bang. So I think Adesanya is going to take this fight. He's going to take this victory. Adesanya looking amazing in his last few fights. He's getting better and better. And that's it, man. I thank you, Dan, to have me here. Good luck to you, man. And hope you guys got it right. Us.
How you doing, the Finelli Feliz, Glover Teixeira coach? Let me tell you something. On this situation right here, I have to pick Adesanya. He's a better slicker. He's a good dancer. He's unbelievable. He moves and everything. I gotta go with him.
All right. Master John Hackleman, Glover Teixeira's big brother, and I pick Israel because I think he had the best walk-in dance I've ever seen when he fought Robert Whittaker, and because of that, I'm picking him.
Fala aí, pessoal, sou Alex Pereira. I think Adesanya go to win. Eu acho que porque é cara inteligente, é cara completo e vai ganhar essa luta.
All right, so all three of them, or all four of them, going with Israel Adesanya. One of them from experience. He knocked Israel Adesanya out in a kickboxing match. Glover, just from breaking down fights in his division forever. Glover's coach from looking at fights forever. And then John Hackleman, because Israel has phenomenal dancing skills. But in all seriousness, they all went with Izzy. And basically, they all said his footwork is too good. His striking is too good. While Jan has a ton of power and he's the bigger guy, he's not going to be able to sort of keep up with Izzy. I'll give my pick in a minute. Let me go to you, Dan. I just want to ask you, so Glover talked about Izzy's weight this week, and Izzy's been very vocal about, I'm going to be my normal weight. I'm not going to balloon up. I'm not going to gain that extra weight for this fight. I'm going to fight at my normal weight. I'm still going to cut. I'm going to do everything I normally do. You were a 185-pound fighter. You were a 170, then a 185-pound fighter, which is your probably most natural weight class. And we did take a fight on sort of shorter notice at 205, and you didn't have to cut that weight. How did that make you feel? Did you feel better and looser and great, I didn't have to cut any weight? Or did you feel, like you would have rather cut the weight and even fought higher?
No, it's funny. Yeah, I was expecting to feel great. I was like, oh man, this is gonna be great. I don't have to cut weight. I'll be 205. I was kind of eating what I wanted. Not terrible, but just didn't have to go crazy with the diet. But when you train for a number of years at a certain weight class and you get into a rhythm of fight camps and cutting weight, your body almost gets acclimated to that. I think Izzy said in one of his interviews that you think when you're heavier, you're going to feel better. I felt off. I felt sluggish. I felt slow. It's like, imagine being a runner, a marathon runner, and having, 20 extra pounds of weight on you. You're not going to compete at the same level. So I think there's ways to do it right over time. But I agree with what Izzy's doing, like the extra 10, 15 pounds, whatever he thinks he's going to gain, shouldn't make that big of a difference in the overall fight. If it was a grappling heavy fight where he was on his back, maybe, but I think it's better to be at a comfortable weight where you feel good, do what you're used to, keep your quickness, keep your speed, and don't go out of your way to gain weight. So I agree with Izzy, and from my experience, the extra weight, I actually didn't like it. So I would probably do the best fights I ever felt actually were the lightest. I was the lightest. So
who do you think wins this fight? So you're saying you agree with Adesanya's approach to cutting weight, treating it like it's an 85-pound fight. What do you think happens in this fight? Who do you think wins?
Yeah, so this is a tricky one. I mean, it's hard for me to pick. Well, first of all, let me say this. Glover should be fighting there tonight. I wish it was Glover fighting in there. I think this is a cool fight, but to be honest, I think most people wanted to see Glover versus Jan for the true light heavyweight championship. I just don't, if Izzy wins, what are they going to do? He's going to tie up the division. There's just a lot of questions coming out of this that I guess we'll see how they handle. But, Glover's a good friend, so I wish he was fighting, and I never wish injury or sickness on anybody, but if there was some way, he's out there, he's ready, man. If they give him the call, I'm going to be on the first flight out there. I'll sneak into the event if I have to. So, I'll get that out of the way. But yeah, hopefully he'll get his shot after this fight, depending how it plays out. So as far as these two go, Jan is obviously much bigger, much more powerful. He's not a really quick guy in terms of footwork. He's more, more stationary, but he's precise. He's got precision and power definitely power with his punches. He's got great kicks after his combinations. He does leave himself open a bit when he charges forward, which is where I think Glover mentioned it. And I think a lot of people think that's where Izzy's going to capitalize. But if Izzy makes the mistake and thinks he has him hurt and maybe not as bad as he really is and starts to exchange a little bit. I mean, we've seen what happens when Jan gets in exchanges with guys. He lands one shot and they go down. So I don't think that will happen. I think Izzy will be smart enough to pick his shots and methodically pick them apart over time. But, it is an interesting fight in terms of the power difference, the size difference. I think Izzy's going to do kind of exactly what Glover said. He's the faster fighter. He's got good foot movement. He evades really well, controls the distance really well, good jab, good kicks. So he's going to keep this fight at a distance. He's going to move away. He's going to stay out of the power, and he's going to really, really try to pick them apart from a distance, similar to Anderson Silva, what he used to do to guys where they almost felt like they couldn't hit him. So, it's a tough one to pick. I think Izzy's the more skilled fighter. But what I will say, because I mentioned Anderson Silva, I don't think Izzy is at that level yet. And, people reference the Anderson Silva fight where he fought James Irving at a catch weight or at 205. This is a different level of competition on both ends. I think Anderson at that time was the GOAT, right? And James Irving was James Irving. So this is Israel Adesanya, who I think is still paving the way to be one of the best. And Jan Blachowicz is the champion. So I think it's going to be a good fight. A lot of Izzy picking him apart. I think Izzy will win the fight. If I had to bet or put DraftKings money on it, I would take Jan at the plus 205 and the $7,000, but I don't have him in my lineup right now.
So I do have Jan in my lineup. I actually think Jan will win. I think he's too big. I think he has too much power. And obviously Izzy's probably the better striker and his foot movement, and Glover talked about it. You talked about it. But I think Jan is just too big, and I think he has too much power. And honestly, I think this is a big step up. And I don't want to say it's early in Israel's career because he has a very storied kickboxing past. He has the 20-0 MMA record. So he has been fighting for a very long time. He has a ton of experience, but this is a big leap up. And I know he's defended his 85-pound belt a few times, but against who? Honestly, like Paulo Costa did nothing.
Right.
Yoel Romero did nothing. So it's not even like he's been in these wars and he's won these wars. The closest fight he's had in a while was Kelvin Gastelum, and Kelvin's a talented dude, but Kelvin should be a 170-pounder. So I'm not trying to diminish Israel's skills. I think he's phenomenal. I think he's going to dominate the 85-pound division for a while. I think this is a big step up. And while Jan is not, he's definitely not a journeyman, but he's had a lot of ups and downs in his career. I still think this is Jan's division. He's the champion right now. He deserves to be the champion right now. He's bigger. He hits harder. And I don't see him folding to the pressure like Izzy's last couple of opponents have. So I think Jan gets it done. And at $7,000, I couldn't pass that up. So Jacob, I'll let you.
Hold on, because I want to ask you a question, because trust me, I've looked at this every which way. I do think Jan has a path of victory, right? But I think it's really just landing that big knockout shot. But with you picking him to win and all that, like, how do you see this fight playing out, over the course of however long you think it's going to go? You think Jan's going to go out there and knock him out in the first round, or you think Izzy's going to pick him apart for 4.5 rounds, and at some point Jan's going to land a shot?
I think it'll be a little of both. I don't think Jan's going to stop him early. I think Izzy's going to try to pick him apart. I think he's going to, stick and move. And Jan's going to Terminator style march forward and land those power shots. When we talked about it earlier, when we broke down the Peter Yan fight, you said, I don't think Sterling can deal with that power over 5 rounds. Right. I think this is the exact same thing. Izzy, listen, I don't know enough about his kickboxing career to say this definitively, but in MMA, he hasn't been hit as hard by anybody who hits as hard as Jan, and let alone over and over and over again. So I think he'll stick and move. I think his movement will be great. I think Jan just absorbs it, marches forward, lands his shots of his own, and eventually wears on Izzy. And I think he will get a stoppage eventually, much later in the fight.
Well, I hope you're right, because then they got Glover versus Jan for the light heavyweight title. There won't be any questions. So I hope so.
Well, and that was in the video we just watched. Glover's concern too was, I think Adesanya wins, but I hope Jan wins so that I can fight him for the belt, because if Adesanya wins, who knows what happens in the division.
Right.
So Jacob, what are your thoughts here? So Dan and I are split. The number one contender on planet Earth agrees that Izzy will win, and all of his staff and partners agree that Izzy will win. So am I a lone survivor here, or do you think Jan will win also?
I think this comes down to house money. Izzy is playing with house money right now. If he's already such a free and loose and confident fighter as it is, and you put on top of it that he's going up in a weight class, if he loses, he loses. He didn't win the 205 title, but he's still the dominant 185 champion. And he's already such a confident guy on top of it, and his striking is so clean. And you mentioned that he hasn't seen the power before. I think people see Izzy, they don't see toughness, because he is such a clean guy, and you see him missing all these shots. But that Gastelum fight was an absolute war. And yes, Gastelum is a small 185 and Jan is a big 205, and there is difference there. But Israel Adesanya has won a kickboxing fight I think it was at heavyweight, and he won a pro boxing fight, I think, at light heavyweight. So he's gone up in weight before and felt, it's not the same type of power, the same type of level of power, but he's done those things before where he's gone up and said, you know what, let's just go up. And he's won those fights. So I definitely have him in my lineup. I knew I was going to pick him in my lineup just for that confidence and those clean fights. And then I started watching the embeddeds, man. And there's something about Jan in his stocking cap, walking through the snow in Eastern Europe, going to train, that toughness, man. There's just something about seeing that. He goes in with an ice pick to break up the ice so he can sit in the ice, and he's got that deep accent. He's like, oh, this feels great. He's just sitting in just ice water and just like loving it. There's something about that toughness that I went from picking Jan and Sterling and doubling that up, because I think you have to double one of those up. There's just too many rounds to spare. So I went from picking the Jan and Sterling fight to I watched the embedded, and there was something about that toughness where I think he drags us into a war with Adesanya. But I think people, don't credit Adesanya's toughness enough in those wars. So I think it turns into a war. And I still think Adesanya is clean enough that he's not going to knock out Jan. I don't think he's got that power at this weight class. But I think he does enough to win. I think this could go a 5-round decision, man, where it's just a back and forth brawl. And Adesanya is just, quick enough to avoid the big one where he gets, hit, but he avoids the big one. So they're both in my lineup. I hope it's a 5-round decision. For Glover's sake, like we're saying, I hope that Jan wins. He definitely should have got the title shot. But I think Adesanya, he pulls this one out.
Well, it's going to be a ton of fun. I'm really hoping COVID doesn't screw any of this card up right now, because it is a rock solid card. So we'll see what happens.
Analysis are getting really, really good every week. I like that one. I hope the fight goes down like that.
Yeah, we brought Jacob in to laugh at. And now he's doing actual research.
Right. From watching, I got to stop swearing. Watching Embedded and geez, man. Got to step our games up. He's got multiple locks of the week in a row.
Next level intel from right here. Next level intel.
Right. He's probably driving by their house, seeing where they're going at night, if they're in bed early, peeking in their windows. Tracker
up right now.
Catfishing. So we'll see what happens. It's definitely an exciting fight. This whole card is exciting. So next up, we're going to walk through our DraftKings picks, build up our lineups, and go from there. Before you go, check out the description below. In there, we have links to our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, and more importantly, to our DraftKings League. Check out the league, join the league, participate in the contests, and as we get going and as you start winning, we're going to start handing out gift cards and participating and doing things like that. So check those out. Every week, there are drops on every fight card. So make sure you check out this channel and our social media on Saturday before the fights start so that you have our most updated lineups and picks.